Alright, I guess that's kind of sort of working. My hair's a little messed up. Please forgive me. Apparently, it looks mean more than anything else in the world. Angela K. Wade is my mom's name, and Brian David Schwartz is my dad's name. I don't know where my mom lives. I think Iowa, the last I heard. My dad lives in Washington State. When people don't care, when they choose to look away, they're allowing things to happen to others that they would not want happening to them. Nearly everybody that I had to go to for help was like this. I already knew from the start that I couldn't go to my family. They're a bunch of child molesters and drug addicts. They don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. And I tried to explain to my mom what was going on. She didn't give a shit. She cared about having normal kids and my little sister's dress. Like, come on, lady. Could you be any more superficial? Is it possible for you to be any more superficial? Not like it makes any difference. My dad is just as superficial. How much of a human being you are to my dad is based on how much money you got. There's a lot of people who promised to help. I had high hopes for them. There was Miss Peaches, but she just, well, couldn't keep her word, couldn't come forward. She knew I was telling the truth. But while I was getting punished for things that I didn't do, and her speaking up could have made a difference, she didn't. I had to make decisions based on her safety and her children's safety. Same thing with Candace Bondurant. Then they want to throw it in my face later on, use their kids as a shield for the horrible things that they did. No, you don't get to do that. You don't. Having kids does not make you responsible. You had kids because you got fucked up on drugs and had unprotected sex. Now you got kids. A lot of people threw me away right from the start. You know, I never did any of these people wrong, ever, and they threw me away like I was garbage. They didn't just throw me away. They wanted to run around and spread more rumors and talk more shit and actually physically assault me and threaten to kill my friends and family. Of course, I don't have any friends. I don't believe any of these people who claimed that they were threatened. I believe these people were pretending in order to manipulate me. That's pretty easy to do. I needed help. They promised the help that I needed, but magically could never follow through. All of their suggestions were suggestions that I'd already tried repeatedly by myself and gotten absolutely nowhere. I think they were just lazy and didn't care. When it came to actually doing the right thing, they were too fucking lazy. And that's the thing with law enforcement, should have been involved every step of the way, but they weren't. They were doing everything that they could to look the other way, to guarantee that none of my evidence was ever looked at, to force me into homelessness, knowing that our shit gets stolen fucking daily. I didn't just need a safe place for me. I needed a safe place for that evidence. And I needed somebody to look at it. Something that nobody bothered to do. Nobody bothered to sit down and actually look at the fucking evidence with me. They're telling me I got to spend all my money to do this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, I got to spend all of my money to travel to where junkies promise to help. I spend all my money to go see Brett Roloff, who promised to help, and I get there and he's strung out on meth. I spend all my money to go see Shannon Alvarado in California, who's going to help me, and she's fucking drunk. Meanwhile, there's all these places that you tell me to call. They're not going to do a goddamn thing unless you call. Unless you say, hey, this is wrong. Because I get treated like it's not even happening. Like every aspect of my life has not been destroyed and demolished. Meanwhile, I fucking hate Facebook. But for most of these people that I got to get in contact with, it's the only way that I have to be in contact. And it's difficult to know if it's them or if it's some fucking wingnut. Most of the time, it's some wingnut. Some crazy person who saw a Natalie Bollinger thing was allowed in one of these Natalie Bollinger fucking. They're not even Natalie Bollinger groups, they're Sean Schwartz hate groups. This shit needed to be investigated. The police needed to do their job, and all I needed was one person actually in support. By the time my dad was actually willing to listen to a word that I had to say, it was an extremely complicated situation, and he wanted to continue to interrupt what I'm telling him. I'm telling you what's going on, and you want to continually interrupt me, which means that you are not listening to me at all. Giving suggestions doesn't mean that you're listening. If you're listening, just like with a movie or a storybook, if you're listening, you're trying to imagine the scenario. Now, sure, you might have a few little deviations where you think, well, how would I try to get out of that situation? But for the most part, you're trying to figure out what's going on. But you're watching something that's already been created. Only one set of events is going to go on in the movies. Regardless of what ideas you might have the very first time you watch it, thinking, well, I would do this or I would do that. Only one thing is going to happen in that movie. The same thing happens in real life. Only one series of events happens in a timeline. You don't magically go from being a solid human being where there's just one of you to all of a sudden one of you is walking to the kitchen and the other one's walking to the bathroom. That's just not going to happen. Now, when it comes to time travel, we're all time travelers. We're all traveling forward. We only travel in one direction, folks. That's why we go from being young to being old to being dead. Not a whole bunch of mashup of being old and then young and then old and then young and then old and then young and then old and then young again, all over and over and over. No, you only travel in one direction. But you are time traveling. You are not stuck in a stationary position for the rest of eternity. Everything else around you is moving, same as you are. The planet we're on is moving. It's moving around a sun. That sun is moving. All these things are constantly in motion. because of time. But then you got to really think about time as far as human life goes. You know, we really don't have a lot of time, but sometimes we have too much. I spend too much time by myself. I got one guy that I talk to in town once in a while who, you know, some things we have in common, most things we don't. And he hangs out with some of my predators, so I just soon avoid it. There's one other guy that I get to talk to in town. He's got marriage issues and kids issues and depression issues and all sorts of issues. He says he'd like to help, but he gets depressed and can't move past his issues to do anything. And that's not entirely true. I mean, he gets little spurts and jumps every so often here and there where he's got a lot of energy to try to get this stuff done. He's motivated, he's got a fire under his butt. But he's dealing with, he's dealing with a crazy woman. In the last few years, I've gotten to see him go through no end of hell over it. So he doesn't have time. There's a lot of people that they have time, they just don't have time. They won't make the time. And that's how you can tell if someone really cares about you. They're going to make the time. My mom didn't make the time. My dad didn't make the time. Brett Roloff didn't make the time. None of these people made the time. Shannon Alvarado, every night she was going to help me. And every night, instead of helping me, she'd get drunk. And when she's drunk, it's everything has to be her way. Lucky for me, the first few nights that I was there, I got to observe that between her and her boyfriend, so I already knew what was up. I was afraid she was a meth head before I went there, though, if that lets you know anything about her. The way that she is, the way that she talks, the fact that it's difficult to get a word in edgewise. When you're listening to your story, right, or you're listening to somebody else's story, the situation that they've gone through, it's important to actually listen to it. Not, oh, well, I would have, like when somebody's telling you they just got robbed, you know, somebody pulled a gun on them and took all their money and they need to use your phone to call 911. And instead of letting them use your phone to call 911, you start going off on a half an hour tangent about how you would have pulled out your combat voodoo and you would have broken his wrist and took his arm and you'd have this and you'd have, shut the fuck up. I'm telling you about a real life situation that just fucking happened, or you're telling them about a real life situation that just fucking happened, and they want to go into story time. I don't need story time. This isn't your story. If you're going to help me, you need to know mine. You also have to be able to look at this stuff. You have no idea how many literally thousands of hours I have spent collecting evidence and trying to save it on USB drives and trying to make photocopies of it and trying to do this and trying to do that, all for stuff that if someone was here, they could just take a look at it. I wouldn't have to expend all of these. I make less than $800 a month to live on, folks. Less than $800 a month. And I got to try to jump through all these hoops to try to get the help that I desperately need. Meanwhile, I got to deal with all of these people, have all of these suggestions of all of these places I should call to try to get help. But are they making these calls with me? No. And then there's my autism advocate. I really need her help. I need her to be honest about everything that's gone on, but she seems to selectively forget a lot of information too. Like there's some pretty important stuff that needs to be written down and it needs to be turned in. Like the fact that I was trying to turn in certain people, although I do have it also documented on my YouTube here, where I was trying to turn those people in, where I have been frantic to get actual help for years. Now, let me tell you about one lady named Stephanie Mejia. Now, she's got kids. She's pretty young. She's got a husband. She was going to come and help me. And I had some money that I could give her and a guy named Ventus to actually help me. Well, I had to spend that money to pawn myself out of jail over false accusations. None of my public pretenders were willing to actually do their jobs. Like, oh, we're going to do the mental competency thing. That's what's important here. Fine, do the mental competency, but allow me access to the evidence so I don't get treated like I'm crazy for saying it. As soon as you start telling a doctor about the shit that the police pulled, they automatically start treating you like you're schizophrenic. The cops' best friends are the medical community, the EMTs. Who is it that killed Elijah McClain? Was that the police officers? No, it was the EMTs who administered those drugs. But they shouldn't have. The police should not have the power to have someone drugged. But we have seen this time and again where the police have asked hospitals and medical personnel to inject someone with drugs. Those people do inject those people with drugs and those people end up dead. You have no idea how many times I tried to turn in the police, and I have to turn in the police to the police. And literally the police officers that I was trying to turn in took me to the fucking hospital and had me injected with drugs. But nobody fucking cares. You can see every day that these things are happening every day in our nation. And it is wrong. But it's only wrong if you give a shit. Rape is only wrong if you give a shit. Murder is only wrong if you give a shit. Gabby Petito's dead. We don't have any evidence whatsoever to show who actually killed her. It could be a serial killer who is still alive, but because Brian's dead, well, people just assume, oh, well, it's fine. He must have been guilty. Well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But y'all stopped giving a shit, now didn't you? You know, we had that Epstein feller. Did a lot of horrible shit. Now he's dead. Now his Hollywood madam, girlfriend, wife, whatever, they're having her trial behind closed doors. The media's not even allowed in there. You know why? Because there's several presidents who are fucking little kids and she knows about it. Yeah, they want to keep that shit under wraps. Which presidents? How many little girls did Donald Trump fuck? We want to pretend that America is the greatest nation on. Are you fucking kidding me? Look at how we treat our poor. Look at how our foster kids are treated. Look at how the homeless are treated. Poor are shoved into poor neighborhoods and treated poorly. Plain and simple. We're told our entire lives what we owe, and if we work harder, if we work harder, if we work harder. Are you out of your fucking mind? Are you that detached from reality? You're one of them fellers that thinks aliens built the pyramids, aren't you? You're one of them fellers that thinks you can travel back in time, aren't you? You're one of them fellers who thinks he's Jesus, aren't you? You're one of those people who thinks that Illuminati are the reason for everything. Illuminati did it. It was the Masons. No. When you make bad decisions, those are your decisions. You made them. When you go and victimize an innocent person because you heard a rumor, the Illuminati didn't make you fucking do that. When these cops committed multiple felonies to try to hide the felonies that they and their fellow officers committed, they didn't do it because of the Illuminati. They did it because they didn't want to get in fucking trouble. And they had the power and position to abuse in order to do so. And they can get away with it because they call me mentally ill and it's magically okay. It's not. It's not okay that I have shown as much evidence as the police will allow me to show them, and they still will do nothing. It is horrible that I have to show that shit on fucking YouTube and Facebook. Well, it's worse than spending all that money for help and having, instead of getting the help from Stephanie Mejia and the help from Ventus, they're busy doing drugs, getting drunk, and fucking. And Shannon Alvarado, she was going to help me, but she's not good with computers. So her boyfriend Rick was going to help me with that part. We were going to do it at night. But every night she's drunk and she's arguing and screaming at the top of her lungs with Rick. That is a highly abusive environment. When you are in an abusive environment, does it matter who's being abused? It's not a comfortable situation. I want you guys to go back and think about your mothers getting beaten up by your fathers growing up. Should you just mind your own business? Is that something that doesn't affect you? Is that something that you can just sit there and read the newspaper while your dad's beating the fuck out of your mom? Is that something you're capable of doing? Because that's what you're asking me to do. The things that you guys actually do, it's okay for you to do them. It's not okay for me. The rules are different for you than they are for me. Just like most of you normal people are pissed off because the police have special rights that make it so they can get away with doing shit to you. Well, they don't always get away with doing shit to you because someone might care. But if they tell the right lie, they get away with it. And that is the issue here. Like Natalie Bollinger, she told the right lie. She didn't go running around telling people that I raped her or molested her or any crazy shit like that. She just told people that I stalked her, which was a goddamn lie. And then all these guys and women who had crushes on her wanted to take their bullshit out on me and assume, oh, well, he wanted to do this. He wanted to do. Bitch, this is the United States of America. You are innocent until proven guilty. At least that's the way it's supposed to be, but it's fucking not. The difference between you people and the police is the difference between anyone who is homeless or called mentally ill and the rest of you people. And you know it, and you exploit it. And you victimize the homeless and the disabled more than any other group. And then you pretend it's okay because it's not racist. Homeless isn't a race. Disabled isn't a race, so it must be fine. We'll focus on the racial issues. Homeless isn't a religion, so it must be fine. Being disabled is not a religion, so it must be fine to victimize those people because obviously We're not doing anything to deny them their religious freedoms, are we? Those are two of the largest classes of poverty that we have in the United States, the homeless and the disabled. And a lot of y'all are going to be like, well, what about this rich person? What about that rich person? You know what? There are exceptions to every rule. I am sure that there are millionaires out there, at least one, who prefers to live outside. Now, whether or not you want to call that homeless or not, I guess is up to your personal perspective. But in reality, he's rich. He doesn't have to live homeless somewhere where there's resources that he can survive on. He's rich, he can buy them. Or he can buy the property that he wants to be on and not get fucked with by the cops or the forest rangers. So sure, there might be one exception to the fucking rule. There might be a few exceptions to the rule. But we are your chosen victims, America. Your chosen victims. Because nobody cares. When you become disabled, you're less of a human being to our society. When you become homeless, you become less of a human being to our society. And then they want to tell you what to do. And if you don't do what they want, and they all got different ideas of what you should be doing, none of them based on reality of the situation, but based on what they imagine the situation to be. My dad didn't bother to listen. He had the way that he imagined the situation to be. Shannon Alvarado, though, was the worst, bar none, out of everyone. She was the worst about that. That's why I thought she was a fucking tweaker. I was telling her how it is, and she can't listen. She ADOS's off in the middle of fucking nowhere on tangents about bullshit that has nothing to do with my situation. Some crazy lunatic theory that she has, some conspiracy tinfoil hat bullshit that she concocted halfway while she was drunk. And here I am. She's bringing up the same stuff over and over and over again. And every time I got to start over again because it's like she has amnesia from the last time she was drunk. And these are the people that I had to try to get help from because I wasn't getting help from my friends. I certainly wasn't getting help from my family. So all of these people with a history of abusing me, they get away with it by calling me mentally ill. And without someone else speaking up, they get to do it for the rest of my life. They've already done it the entirety of my life. You can't tell on people in institutions. By institutions, I mean hospitals, I mean jails, I mean the police force. You cannot tell on those people without help. The situation that I had with Natalie had gotten so completely out of hand before I even got out of Virginia that the police needed to be involved seriously and pay attention and do something about it. Now, all these things that people keep telling me, well, you should look this up and you should look that up, and this is illegal and that's illegal, and you need to call this place and you need to call that place. My Facebook is full of calls to those places, and my YouTube here is full of calls to those places where they didn't do what you think they should do. A lot of people, after I've had hundreds of calls with these places, someone will come on and they'll watch one of my videos or they'll watch the Rob Gavigan thing and they'll hop on and they'll say, hey, why didn't you try this? Motherfucker, I tried that 100 times, but you just jumped in the middle of the fucking book. You don't know what the fuck is going on. I get that you're curious, but I don't give a fuck about your curiosity if you're not willing to help. I don't give a fuck about your curiosity if you're not willing to look at everything. I don't give a fuck about your curiosity if you're only out for a witch hunt. But it's fine, isn't it? It's fine because I'm not young, because I'm not pretty, because I have no kids, because I don't own my own property. These are all excuses by your society. These are all excuses to harm people. Being a male validates your harm against me, doesn't it? It's valid because I'm a male. If I were a female, these things would not be tolerated, would they? But it's okay because I'm a male. Nasty. And I got people who I thought were my friends that, well, Case Leighton Morris, for example. When I hurt my back, he had ideas about what I should be doing, things I'm not able to do with a fucked up back. But if I did what he wanted, he was going to help me. When Natalie died, he blocked me and threw me away like trash. Didn't bother to find out what was going on. And it's horrible. Like the people who are supposed to care don't. That's not my choice. That's not my fault. But you guys think that just because we're born in America, we have these fucking rights, and we don't. You're a fucking stupid son of a bitch.